Kick off summer with Memorial Day savings at Lowe's. Right now, get 5 Scott's Naturescapes 1.5 cubic foot mulch bags for just $10. Plus, get up to 40% off select major appliances and save an extra $50 on every $500 you spend on select major appliances $396 or more. Lowe's, we help, you save. Valid through 5/28. Mulch offer excludes Alaska and Hawaii. Selection varies by location. While supplies last. See Lowe's.com for more details.
Hey folks, and welcome to Typology, the show on which we explore the mystery of the human personality and the human adventure all through the lens of the Enneagram. My name is Anthony Skinner, your producer and co-host. Happy that you're here and happy that Dr. Morgan Cutlip is here with us as well. She's an Enneagram 9 and she is the author of the brand new book, A Better Share, How Couples Can Tackle the Mental Load for More Fun, Less Resentment, and Great Sex. You're going to want to check out this book from Dr. Morgan Cutlip, Enneagram 9. Hey, today we even dive into some of Dr. Cutlip's own personal challenges, learning to be confrontational, confronting her Enneagram 3 husband on some of her needs and how they need to be worked out in their marriage and relationship. And then we, of course, dive into her book. So you're going to love this conversation. Glad you're here. That's it for me, Anthony. And now, without any further ado, here's the man of the hour, Ian Cron.
Typology friends, today is a big day in the house. Enneagram 9, Dr. Morgan Cutlip, author of the new book, A Better Share. Wow, Morgan, welcome to Typology.
Thank you for having me. It's so great to be here.
You are an Enneagram 9. Mm-hmm. I am married to an Enneagram 9. The sweethearts of the Enneagram, they are known as. How has your type shaped the way that you've historically shown up in relationships, given that your book's about relationships? That's my first question.
Yeah. Well, I first learned about the Enneagram probably, 10 years ago, somewhere around there. And I was at a women's retreat and everyone was sitting around talking about Enneagram. I'd never heard of it. And one of my friends was like, "Oh, you're for sure a 9. And 9s sometimes have anger issues." And I was like, I never get angry. Like, what are you talking about? Anger issues. And so I went on a deep-ish dive at that time, started reading about it. And it was actually like a really massive insight for me and totally resonated. My desire to keep the peace, my desire to make sure everyone is okay, to sort of avoid conflict at any cost. And so I'd say over the last several years, that was a lot of the work that I ended up doing, which was getting more comfortable with confrontation because my relationship required me to get more comfortable with it. Because, if I bring up a need, my husband gets defensive, I could either shut down, stomach it to keep the peace, or I had to push through to actually advance our relationship. So it's been part of my story, part of our story.
That's beautiful. What type is your husband?
He's a 3.
He's a 3. That's very interesting because 3s typically, we say that they're in the heart center, but they're the cardinal number inside that center, right? In between the 2 and the 4. 2s are exquisitely attuned to other people's feelings. 4s are exquisitely attuned to their own feelings. And 3s probably have more feelings than any other type on the Enneagram, close to 4, except that they're out of touch with their own feelings.
I mean,
it's not that they're so much out of touch, they just don't even know how to name them. Like they don't have a very good vocabulary around feelings.
Yeah,
that's hard for them.
Sorry, I am just like, you're saying things, I'm like, because it's funny. I will tease my husband that he has like, I can't remember the term I came up for it, but it's basically like after the fact insight. So he'll like be crabby or he'll seem all bent out of shape. I'll ask him what's going on. He has, I'm good, I'm fine. And then sometimes way back when we were not as, solid in some of these dynamics, it would be like, oh, something's wrong with you. It'd sort of get flipped around. But then later on it would come out, oh, this stressful thing happened, or he was worried about this thing. And I was like, you really struggled to have that in the moment insight with what's going on with you. And then the other piece that hits right home for me, which is especially early in our relationship, I would get accused a lot of being really sensitive.
Oh, yeah.
And I am. I'm sensitive in the sense that I like absorb everything around me. I'm not
Like
sensitive.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like a 9.
Like a 9, yeah, which was like, the world makes sense when I learned about my type. But I'm not sensitive in that I really get offended. Like I don't really get offended very easily, but I am sensitive in that I'm like a sponge. And I remember at one point when I had some more insight into some of the stuff, saying to my husband, like, actually, your emotional world and sensitivity is pretty high. And I think like there's some projection going on because like I'm not feeling sensitive to some of the things you think that I am. And so it was just, it's been an interesting just sort of perspective on how we function.
Yeah. It's amazing, right? You're a relationship expert and you've written a book about relationships, and yet it's sort of the bottomless hole of revelation on a regular basis, right? It's like just when you thought you got to the bottom and you really knew what you were talking about, you realize I really don't know very much at all, right?
It's so true. Yeah, dynamics are complicated. You bring two people together and it's just a combination of issues that can rear their heads. It's just endless. So yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. So what helped you like kind of begin to reconnect with your voice and your sense of agency, which 9s struggle to do and often don't do until later in life?
I think a few things. One in particular was becoming a mom. So for me, motherhood just sort of flipped things upside down in the sense that I felt like I was kind of losing myself. I think I'm prone, as a 9, probably prone to that anyway, just to sort of, be easy, fade to the background. And moms are sort of pushed to kind of fade to the background naturally anyway, because we got to take care of our family and our children. And so I reached a point where I noticed I was kind of dissolving into somebody I'd never wanted to be. So my mom, I have a wonderful mother. She's adopted. So there's like, you could unpack that in an entire episode of what comes with that experience. And so, she, when she would get stressed, there was some immaturity around how she would handle things. And so I grew up in a home where sometimes that was kind of unpredictable, how she would react. And her tension would come out in a way that was like deeply uncomfortable for me as a kid. And so when I started to see some of that show up in myself, that tension, that just massive overwhelm and kind of probably burnout really was what was showing up for me. And then translating that then into like this feeling of kind of resentment toward my husband, and just our interactions started to shift in a way where I felt like I didn't like who I was. So I had a choice, which was I have to get over the discomfort that I experience when we enter into some sort of tension and conflict in order to push through to the other side where I have some agency. I am allowed to voice my needs and put those on the table, or I was going to become someone I didn't like to be and potentially lose my relationship in the process. And so that was a big motivator for me.
I love that you said earlier that you were dissolving into a person you didn't want to be. And the word dissolve immediately kind of jumped out of the sentence at me, because that is a description of what happens with 9s when they're not very healthy. Sometimes I use the word evaporate. Sometimes dissolve. Sometimes it's what happens when a 9 is self-negating. It's almost like, or when a 9 is, we tend to think of, oh, they're so selfless. And it's like, oh, careful. What they really are is selfless.
Yeah.
Like self-less. They lose self. Their self begins to disappear as it merges usually with a group sometimes, but particularly if they're a social 9, but oftentimes if they're particularly a 1-to-1 9, what we call a 1-to-1 9, they tend to merge with another stronger, bigger personality individual, like a 3 could be. Right? Just bigger, more aggressive, assertive personality. The 9 begins to fade into the background and lose their voice, lose their agency, just merge with the agenda of the 3 in your situation.
Yeah. And yeah.
Keep going.
Well, it's just bringing up like so vividly this conversation that my husband's name is Chad, that we had around this time. And, he travels every week for work. His career has always been sort of at the forefront. And I'm grateful for that. It's not lost on me that what a gift that can be, but also it meant sort of like he was kind of the sun and our family life revolved around it. And I remember at one point saying to him, we had an argument, and I don't remember his words, but they cut me because he made some comment about how I don't make a sacrifice or something. And I was like, whoa. Like all that I do is to lift you up because you're the center. And so I don't know my wing. Maybe we could like parse that out, but I knew that like that wasn't sitting well with me. So there was some part of my 9ness that like, I don't know. The idea that everything was about him and I took up no space, because that's kind of how it was for a while. It did not sit with me well. And so I think that was like, I remember that fight, that argument being like this one moment where I was like, first of all, you're going to hear me and how I sacrifice to support you. And, we're a family dynamic. It takes 2 to make this function. And also it's time for me to be able to occupy some space, and because I got work to do too in this world that is important to me. So yeah, it was a big shift for us.
Wow. And it sounds like it worked out.
So far, yeah. And actually, confronting some of these, I don't know, just these tendencies, I guess you would say, in our types, and understanding them and confronting them. I remember having him read about being a 3 at one point and being like, you need to develop a little bit of insight into how you are and who you are. And I do think we've really come out in such a stronger, we have such a stronger foundation, and we're able to navigate this stuff with kind of, I don't want to jinx us, but kind of with ease after really confronting some of this stuff.
How did he respond when he read it?
When he read it?
Yeah.
He responded pretty well to it. I had primed it. So it's kind of like, I got him ready for the information. It was a long time ago, but I remember there were parts of these like, this doesn't really seem to fit. But some of the other parts, is like, doesn't 3 struggle a bit with identity? Am I getting that right? Yeah.
Yeah, 2s, 3s, and 4s, all 3 of them.
Yeah, that seemed to hit for him. I don't quite know if he's figured that one out. I was hoping that would send him on an excursion or something. He's still figuring that out. But, I think men in general, but then specifically, 3s, so much of my husband's identity is really tied up in, what he achieves, what he does versus who he is. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's starting to catch up with him a little bit. Mm-hmm. Starting to feel that kind of like, well, as he's getting a little older, like, what is this all about? What is life all about? What have I accomplished in my, yeah.
So what was your biggest, I was going to say, what was your biggest challenge as a 9? And because that's very confrontational what you did. Like, what did you have to, what was scary about it? What did you feel like you had to overcome to get there, to confront him about that?
I think my own anxiety of the discomfort of tension. So when he would get upset with me because I would stir the pot in any way, I'm like, I'm disrupting the peace. Okay. Which is, I want peace so much. So to disrupt the peace was really uncomfortable, but then he wants peace as well. So the knowledge that I'm going to disrupt it and I'm going to face, his reaction, that was the hardest part. And so I also had to kind of like come to terms with the fact that I'm pretty rational And so he can become, he can have his piece, whatever messed up and have a reaction, but I am clear enough to help work our way through it. And so I think that was a bit of a confidence building thing that I had to do. Yeah. It was not an easy thing, but it was necessary.
Heck no. Nothing easy about it, right? It's and part of the reason it's so hard is nines, and we don't talk about this enough, right? We talk about the core motivation of the 9 as being a need to maintain connection, to preserve inner and outer peace. And one of the ways they do that is by avoiding conflict, right? Mm-hmm. But we talk a lot about their need to maintain inner and outer peace, but we don't talk enough about their need to maintain connection.
Oof, yeah. I mean, that's ultimately like the big fear because, I mean, I mentioned about my mom. I mean, being adopted comes usually with some avoidant attachment. So her default response was to disconnect if she was upset. So I'm coming in sort of with that fear. And then, they say we tend to marry the partner that we're connected most with, whether that's in conflict or in positive stuff. So my husband has some similarities to my mom, actually. And so,
is that a surprise? You are a psychologist, right?
It's not a surprise.
Not a surprise.
It's not a surprise. And my husband and I we all joke about it. But he would sort of, well, guess this isn't going to work out. Well, he'd kind of do that thing that's terrifying. It doesn't anymore early on in our relationship, do that thing. And so the idea of disrupting the peace, causing conflict and potentially being threatened with disconnection is just, I don't know. It's one of the scariest things ever.
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting what you just said. I was reminded of something a professor of mine said in graduate school about relationships. It's a little overstated, but I appreciate what he was trying to get at. He said, it's inevitable that we end up marrying someone who closely resembles the person who hurt us most in childhood.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I mean, I struggle with broad sweeping statements.
I get it.
but I do think there's a lot of truth to it. I mean, I think, some of us marry, the parent we were like just closest to in positive ways. So it's not always the case, but I do think, it's like Freudian, we're trying to have a new ending to our story. And so sometimes we act it out over and over again in our relationships. And so, it pans out. I think for me, it fits. Yeah.
So you're usually too young and too dumb to figure this out, right? Like you have to be married a good while before you realize, oh my gosh, you're my mother. Like, you know what I mean? Like that was my experience. Like I'd been married a long time before I went, oh, wait a minute. I thought I married the opposite of my mother. Like you are so different from my mother. Like Anthony knew my mom and knows my wife. Like you can't imagine two more different human beings, and yet underneath the hood, two very similar in weird ways, right? In my relationship, and I had to arrive at this point in my marriage one time when I was like, you know what? I either got to be married to the person who's right in front of me, but I got to stop being married to my mom. Like I've got to love who's actually here.
That's good.
Yeah, it is good. Yeah.
Otherwise, I was just going to be filled with frustration and resentment, trying to your point, actually work out this drama.
Yes.
This unconscious drama in the background. I got to stop working it out with you. Like you're not actually my mom. So it's like that. You remember Anthony? You remember that little child's book? Are You My Mother? Do you remember that, Morgan? Do you know
I
that
know the book. Yeah.
Are you my mother? And like this, well, that was pretty much me, just walking around the planet going, are you my mother? Like just, can I work it out with you? Can I work it out with you? It's like, no, you can't work it out. No, sorry, it's too late. All right, let's talk about the book, A Better Share, How Couples Can Tackle the Mental Load for More Fun, Less Resentment, and Great Sex. Wow. Okay. There's a title that'll grab them every single time. So tell me what the phrase "a better share" refers to.
Yeah. So, do you know what the mental load is?
Keep going.
Okay, I think we should start there because that's the term that the book is kind of built around. So the mental load is the seemingly never-ending running to-do list that we carry around in our heads. It has two major components. The first is that the majority of things that are part of the mental load are invisible. So in home and family life, this makes it hard to hand these things off, makes it hard to receive appreciation and acknowledgement around. And then the other thing is that the mental load takes up a ton of cognitive real estate. This just means that it crowds out room for other things, whether that's finding peace, patience, presence, getting in the mood for sex. All that stuff requires headspace. So I'm using layman's terms, there's actually like psychological theory behind these things, but if you don't have room for these things, you're going to ultimately end up pretty stressed out and overwhelmed. So everybody has a mental load. However, in home and family life, when we look at the research time and time again, it's predominantly carried by women. So it doesn't matter if they work part-time, full-time, they're carrying a lot of this sort of mental load. Men tend to really understand it when it comes to the work life, or even the physical tasks, like I'll do the dishes, I'll mow the lawn, that type of stuff. But a big piece of it is actually the emotional work of the home and family life. And so I can define that if you want, but a better share is really about how couples can navigate the mental load together. I kind of talk about externalizing it. That's the enemy in the relationship. It's you two as a team versus the enemy, because modern family life is absolutely ruthless. There's so many demands on us at all times. So how do we as a couple find a better share, find a better way forward to navigate all that is on our plates so that we remain connected and ultimately, enjoy being in a relationship together, enjoy our family life, and have a great sex life.
So I love that you're talking about this mental load, and I'm thinking about nines and how nines respond to how did you or do you respond to the pressure of the mental load specifically as a nine?
Well, I mean, it's changed, but early on, the way that I dealt with it was to just do it all and to not put it on anyone else. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's an especially a nine thing. And it's also very much a woman thing. And so I feel like maybe mine was just a little bit turbocharged, my tendency to do that. I was so worried about bugging my husband. Like I think even about early motherhood, and I would say, something along the lines of, I'm going to go to the grocery store. Can I leave? Our daughter's name is Effie. Can I leave Effie with you? And he's like, yeah, sure. And then I'd be stressed out about putting him out, which is like, it's his kid. So I think, a big part of it was that I just felt this internal pressure. It wasn't even coming from him to make it as easy as possible on him. And so I ended up taking it all on.
Yeah. Twos and nines and codependency. It's a theme, right? It's a theme, which isn't to say all nines and twos are codependent. It is to say that they have a particular vulnerability to codependency, and worrying like I can't be okay unless you're okay, type of thing, right?
It's destabilizing.
And let's just say you're not okay with watching the kid right now. I can be okay with you not being okay about that, and you're still going to watch the kid. Yeah, like you know what I mean? It's like
Oh my
hard
gosh.
for nines and twos.
So, okay, I have to share this. So several years ago, when I was kind of doing this work, I didn't experience. So I do experiments in our relationship all the time, and I don't tell my husband. Yeah, I test things out. I do them, and a lot of times it's to see if I do something different, if I can shift our relationship without him ever knowing. Mm-hmm. So this whole thing of I can't be okay unless you're okay was very, very real for me. I felt. I would try to manage it because I'm very self-aware. So I'd be like, I know this isn't okay. I try to manage it, but it just kind of spills over. So several years ago, I made a pact with myself for 30 days. I would take 0 things personally. So as a 9, he walks in the room, he's got a vibe about him. I feel it, I absorb it. And then I'm temperature checking. Hey, are you okay with me? Is something going on? What's the matter with you? Or did I do something? Did I upset you? Is it what I said? I do this thing. And he'd be like, no, it's nothing to do with you. And I would keep pushing. And then inevitably we would end up arguing because I was annoying, because I was constantly looking for him to stabilize me, make me feel okay. And so, yeah, I did this experiment for 30 days, and it was life-changing, honestly. I just decided that nothing was about me, and almost always that sort of tension I would pick up on, I'd kind of ignore it, or even I would intensify my like positive affect. So I would not, it's like emotional contagion, you know, you sort of like soak it up. I would sort of intensify it a little bit, and inevitably it would shift quickly, very quickly. And we would never find ourselves in that sort of spiral where it's like, he's annoyed with me constantly doing that. And so it was a really cool learning experience for me, and it made our relationship a lot lighter.
How does it work for you to run tests in the home and then give his results on podcast?
He does. So I am not a passive aggressive person, but I don't think he listens to my podcast. So I'm, which I don't expect him to, you know, it's like, I've done a lot of interviews, you know, but I have joked before where I'm like, I'll know he's listened when he's like, you experiment on me? Because I've done other ones too.
The guy doesn't know it, but he's actually in a graduate school lab. He's a mouse in a maze.
He is in the Truman Show.
Two-way mirrors all over our house.
He's taking his little paw. He's taking He's taking his little paw and he's hitting the little button for more cocaine out of the vial. Just
little does he know all the mirrors are two-way. And you have a control room where you're watching everything.
Entire graduate school class is on the other side of the mirror watching. Oh, this could go sideways. We must stop now. All right. So you talk about how people are, and these are your words, chronically overwhelmed and relationally overextended, right?
Yeah.
But particularly women. Mm-hmm. Typically, in my experience, what happens when people feel that way and unseen or misunderstood, what arises is resentment.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So talk to me about the dynamic of resentment in relationships.
Yeah, well, in this context, I mean, you kind of nailed it, which is that resentment can come from a number of factors, but it usually results from this chronic feeling of being unseen, unappreciated, like an ongoing hurt that's never sort of repaired or addressed, a feeling of unsafety in your relationship. So when it comes to the mental load, a lot of times how it develops is one partner feels like they're doing all of it. It's also a subjective experience. I just want to say resentment is subjective. So it's also how you kind of create a storyline around things. But if a person feels like they're doing all of the things for the home and for the family, and they're not supported in that endeavor, but then on top of it, they are not appreciated and valued for what they're bringing to the table, it's a fast track to resentment. The other path that gets you there is when usually a woman will initiate some sort of conversation, and sometimes it dribbles out and it can sort of sound like criticism or not very clear, like, I just need you to do more, or I'm overwhelmed, can't you see it? You know, sort of these kind of like vague sorts of complaints. But usually she is the one initiating that. If that is met with defensiveness, dismissiveness, you know, oh, you make things harder than you need to, or you try to do too much, right? Some of these things, or the hardship Olympics. Well, I'm busy too. What do you expect? That kind of stuff. That also is a fast track to resentment because she's feeling whatever it is, unsupported, unseen, unappreciated. And then on top of it now, she can't turn to her partner for support. And so this just kind of sets you down a path, because then she's either going to get louder, she's going to chase, and that creates a parent-child dynamic, which is not good. Also, usually he sort of distances more. Now they're kind of stuck in this cycle that they can't really figure out how they got there. Or she's going to start to shut down and she's going to stuff it. This is going to shift into a negative attitude toward him, more distance, more tension. She's going to kind of be kind of gross, kind of like icked out by him. She's not going to be attracted to him. He's not safe. So why would she be? And so this starting point can become, set off a pattern that can become deeply entrenched in relationships and lead couples down a path where it's like they get to a certain point. They're like, we don't even know how we got here, but I don't even know you anymore. I don't even like you anymore. I'm not attracted to you. And so it's a really important just pain point, a really important tension point that couples need to learn how to work through.
As you know, I believe the Enneagram is one of the most powerful tools for developing self-awareness. But to gain the benefits, you need to know your type. Taking an Enneagram assessment is the first step toward understanding yourself and the people around you. It offers insights that can enhance your self-awareness, personal growth, emotional intelligence, your relationships. It's not just a one-time test. It's a lifelong tool that will help you navigate life with more clarity, purpose, and empathy. And now, when you take my brand new Typology Institute Enneagram assessment, you'll receive a research-backed, scientifically evidenced, comprehensive report that's easy to understand. Not only will you learn your dominant Enneagram type, but you'll gain insight into aspects of the Enneagram most other assessments don't cover, such as your dominant wing, your subtype, orientation to time, and even stances. Get your results today at typologyinstitute.com/assessment. Enter the discount code Typology Podcast on the checkout page to get 10% off your assessment. Again, that's typologyinstitute.com/assessment and enter Typology Podcast for 10% off. So sometimes I think, in my work, I remember I haven't had a practice in quite some time, but I do remember in my own experience, but also in the experience of listening to couples, there is this kind of, dare I say, mythology around fairness. Like as though there really is something fair. Like there's some moment where people are actually doing 50-50. Like, isn't that kind of a myth that there's, talk to me about that. Cause that's important for people as they're dealing with the mental load, right?
Totally. I think a lot of people we'll sort of talk about it and say, well, things need to be equal. We're after equality. And I think that's a really poor measure for a number of reasons. So I say it doesn't need to be 50-50. It needs to feel fair. Again, fair is subjective and it's a moving target. I know I've had the experience in my own life where it's sort of like I'm moving through my day and things feel pretty good. And then one more thing gets added to my plate and all of a sudden it doesn't feel fair from one moment to the next. And so because of that, couples have to actually get really good at talking about this part of their relationship to touch base on how are things feeling. Because when you feel like it's unfair, that's when you're going to be set up on that path toward resentment. So 50-50 is tricky. I think 50-50 promotes scorekeeping among couples because it's like you'll always be like, well, I did this. What are you doing? Now we're out of balance. And that is just not a relationship anyone wants to be a part of. I think the other thing is that everybody's life circumstances look very, very different. So my husband travels every single week for work. We would never have 50-50. I carry a lot more. So it would not be fair. And so we have to take into mind, what does your family look like? What are the rhythms of your home? What's the sort of output of time and energy each partner has? And then from there, you negotiate what fairness looks like in the relationship.
I love the word rhythm because I think, though it's harder when you have kids at home, I think couples can, like I've observed in my marriage now we have adult children who don't live at home, but that we have what I call sustainable rhythms. They're actually peaceful rhythms, where we have, like we intentionally downsized into a much smaller home, like an old craftsman cottage. It's just very sweet. We're little people, so we don't need a 5,000 square foot house. And I'm like, I watch this sometimes, and it's a little bit like ballet with us. It's like, we know after all these years, our gifts, what we're good at, who covers what, and there's just this kind of flowiness to it. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I do. Yes.
But I do remember having little guys at home, and it was more like, you're going to what? There was more, the heat was just on. The mental load was bigger.
Yes.
It was greater.
Yes, and how wonderful that you didn't like lose each other during that busier season. And I think because I think we become naturally more disconnected during that busier season, but you don't want to develop the patterns and the hurts that become really hard to overcome later on. And I think, when I, see social media content on this topic, overall, it's a very volatile topic. It's very tricky to share about this because there's a lot of hostility actually toward men on this topic, sort of like pointing the finger. That's their problem that we're struggling. And I take a completely different perspective, which I think it's that life is chaotic. Life is busy. Life is expensive. We have this pressure to be productive. More and more homes are dual income families. We're pulled into our devices. We're parenting we're now like trying to parent in a way that we raise emotionally intelligent kids. Do you know how much more demanding that is on all of our resources? It's so important that couples remember it's the two of us versus the world. We have to manage all of this in a way that keeps us close and connected at the end of the day, because that ballet type of fluidity is coming, but we have to weather this well together.
So in the subtitle, you talk about how couples can tackle the mental load. We've been talking about that for more fun, less resentment, and great sex. Let's talk about great sex for a minute. Sure. So you write that it doesn't have to be a thing of the past, right? So what are some ways great sex can be restored in a marriage?
Yeah, this is like not a simple answer. Listen, sex is a vulnerable act. Sex requires, especially for women, I know I have to paint with kind of broad brushstrokes here, but sex is an act of vulnerability. It requires completely opening yourself up to somebody else. And so if you have a pattern in your relationship where she is not feeling loved, cared for, like you are safe, like she can come to you when there is some, emotional need, then this is going to create a feeling of insecurity in the relationship, which is going to make it hard to have great sex. If he's feeling like he is married to a mother who nags him, if he is feeling like he is constantly being criticized, that is not conducive to a healthy sex life. So part of arriving, this is an unsexy answer to this question, but part of arriving to a place of having a healthy sex life is making sure your relationship is cared for outside the bedroom. When your relationship is strong outside the bedroom, it's going to just add more vibrancy and excitement and enthusiasm inside the bedroom. And so, throughout the book, I try to really guide couples to that place. And then it ends with a chapter, it's near the end of the book, on sex and how you build this back. So it really all goes together because sex ultimately is a relational act. And so your relationship has to be in a good place.
I love that. So, all right, we're wrapping up. Question. What would you say to nines, particularly women, but guys too, listening today who deeply relate to being the steady one, like the reliable one in the relationship, but they feel like they're disappearing in the process?
Ugh, that's such hard work. I want to give him a hug because it's hard. I would say that the fight is worth the end result. If you disappear in your relationship, you are going to lose the relationships that matter the most. It's that self-fulfilling prophecy of we're just going to fade away. We're just going to be easy. We're just going to be the steady one. And in the end, we're just crumbling. And ultimately our relationships aren't going to actually work out. And we're kind of lying to our partner. When we don't show up with our, I don't know what to call it, authentic self, with our real needs and our real humanness, then we're sort of presenting a fake partner in the relationship, and we're not showing up with truth and honesty. I remember when I started making some changes in my assertiveness. It's funny, my husband's really assertive, but he can't totally take my assertiveness, so we had to navigate that. But when I was first trying, I was trying all these different ways. He was like, "You've changed," and it was not a compliment. It was not a compliment. And I said to him, actually, no, I'm more of myself now than I have ever been. You're just getting what's inside of me. And he was like, oh.
So what's so interesting about this is in my marriage, this is years ago, and the Enneagram, boy, did it help. But I remember having multiple arguments with my wife where as a 9, we'd go to counseling, we're struggling, and she'd go, "You just want me to be like you." And I would be like, "No, that's precisely the opposite. What I want you to be is more like you. I want you to actually show up because as a 9, you're not showing up. There's no energy, no agency, no voice. It's just, right? But I'm a 4. Now, if a 3 had this experience, the 3 would be like, oh, wait a minute, this is slowing me down. Like this, you have changed my script. Yeah. This is not the script of our marriage. Yeah. The script of our marriage is you support me. Because, I mean, look, when 3s aren't very healthy, they're a little bit higher on the narcissistic continuum. Okay. And this is true. Same with 7s. Like certain types are just a little bit. And so I'm not saying they're narcissists. I'm just saying, everyone listening, don't say, I'm not saying they're narcissists. I'm not pathologizing them. What I'm saying is that they are a little higher on the continuum than other types. Like I'm always telling 9s that they need to be more narcissistic. They're usually too low on the scale. Like they need to assert themselves more, see themselves as mattering more, as showing up more, occupying more space and taking back personal authority, et cetera, right? But a 3 who's married to a 9, like I'll be honest with you. All right. All right. So sometimes, how old were you when you got married?
26 and 28.
Oh, okay. So that's about probably average. So, but particularly when they get married young.
But caveat, we met and dated. We didn't date the whole time, but we met when I was 14 and he was 16.
Ah, the plot thickens. Okay. So, but here's the thing. Oftentimes I've had to confront 3s on this. They marry more withdrawn types, often 9s, who, not always, but often 9s, who are willing to kind of draft off the back of them and just go with the flow. And if you want to work, 6 months out of the year in Geneva, okay, I'll take care of the kid. It's almost like there's like this sort of quid pro quo silent contract and then you change the script.
I did.
And he goes, I don't like this. But for me as a 4, I was like, I like this. It's just how different people are. I needed the script to change, but it was an inconvenient truth for the 3 in your relationship that you were changing.
Oh yeah, I had to push for it. I mean, and the cool part is that he's evolved. Yeah, like he's shifted, and so I mean, luckily, I think he's a pretty healthy 3, and so at least now, for the most part. So it actually ended up being a really beautiful thing for our relationship, and it's become so much stronger. But yeah, I mean, if you were sitting here, he'd be like, "Yeah, I didn't really like you," because I remember. Oh my gosh. Okay, sorry. I know we're wrapping up. I remember this one time. I mean, I have my doctorate. I was finishing up school when we got married. I've worked with my dad for 15 years. It was never like a new thing. And I remember like not even that long ago, maybe like 7 years ago, he's like, I'm just realizing that you want to work. And I was like, where have you been, dude? Like what? I don't know if you've seen Anchorman, but there's like that scene where he's like, Veronica wanted to be an anchor. And he's like, I thought that was a joke. And I was like, what's happening? We're living separate worlds. And now we laugh about it. But yeah, it was very much like I was in his backdrop.
The reason I say it's an inconvenient truth is because the 3 is like, I got stuff to do. Like I got a lot of projects and your feelings and all of this new you stuff is going to slow me down. Yeah. Yep. This is going to create inefficiencies. You are now introducing a drag on the ship, right? Like you're letting down the anchor and I'm still trying to sail. And that can be so frustrating for 3s who typically get angry when there's anything that stands between them and the goalpost.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And it's like, oh, wait a minute. Now you got me. Yeah.
I'm like, I think that's my life. Yeah. Yes.
That's hilarious.
But and it's shifted. But if I shifted and he remained sort of locked into that mode, I don't think we'd be in a good place. No. So because but he made room for me.
Yeah,
he made room for me.
That's really good. And because a lot of times, as you know, and not just threes, but anyone, if they can't make space for the fact that human beings evolve and relationships evolve and change, then it's not a good prognosis.
No, it would not. In the field that I'm in, I was like, if this doesn't give, I see the writing on the wall here. It's not going to be good. Right. But can I say one thing about the Enneagram that I think is really cool? And I do this in other ways in my book, but something I always loved about it and that I thought was helpful when Chad read part of it and then I learned about myself was that it sort of depersonalizes things that feel really personal. Mm-hmm. It's like, this isn't that you like have this vendetta against me or whatever. It's that these are proclivities that we have based on our type. And I think that's really powerful for couples to understand when they understand how it just kind of is like, this is not a you and him thing necessarily. It feels very personal when you're living it. And it helps you take a little bit more of an objective view and actually be able to talk about this stuff with some of the intensity removed. I think it's just especially a beautiful part of it.
Yeah. And because it also, you can't, if you say to somebody, I am a 9 and they say, I am a 3, when you bring up stuff in the relationship that's not working and it's type centered, right? Mm-hmm. Then you can talk about the type versus you.
Yes. Yep.
Yep. And then what you can do is kind of like avoid, and this isn't exactly the right term, but we were actually using this in a previous podcast. What you can avoid are some attribution errors.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, oh, you're not a bad person. Actually, you're a 3. And this is a 3 when they're not doing great. And that's what's going on here, et cetera, right? And so versus you're a bad person, you're selfish and too interested in your own career, not interested enough in this marriage, or, blah, blah, blah. And that's actually could be an attribution error. And so what it does is it eliminates that from happening in some really cool ways. All right. Everybody, listen up. Go get yourself a copy of A Better Share by our new friend, Dr. Morgan Cutlip. Morgan, tell folks elsewhere where they can learn about what you're doing.
Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram. My handle is Dr. Morgan Cutlip, and then my website's the same, drmorgancutlip.com.
Well, that's pretty simple and easy.
Yeah.
Love that. All right, Typology Tribe. Thanks for listening. Thanks for your loyalty. Don't forget, by the way, about the Typology Institute Enneagram Assessment. We are so stoked about this new psychometric instrument that we spent 2 years and a dumb amount of resources having created by a research psychologist to have a high degree of validity and accuracy and reliability. And we are stoked for everyone to have opportunity to get it. Gives you your type, gives you your subtype, gives you your wing, and a 20-plus page report for everybody that takes it. It's a big win. My corporate clients love it, and more people in the consumer space are picking up on it. Please check it out. If you go to Typology or go to Ian Morgan Cron, hit assessments, you can find out about it. And again, Morgan, thank you. Anthony, thank you. And may you have love. May you have joy. May you have peace. May you have healing. May you have rest. Until next time.